What's your okay? My coworker is definitely getting fired for this one story where she didn't end up getting fired. Worked at a small radio station. Guy who was on air before me would record the local news for me to play at 6 p.m. It was recorded, so if he messed up, he would just start over and edit that part out. Well, one day he forgets that he messed up, so he doesn't edit it. I play the news on air at 6, and in the middle I hear, "Now I have to do this damn thing again." Then in his pleasant radio voice, "Hi, I'm Jim Thomas with your 6 o'clock news update." Not sure why he didn't get fired. Story 2. A guy I worked with got a Dewey in a company-owned car with used car dealer plates on it, doing 75 miles per hour and a 35 with 5 people in the car. He's now the used car manager. Story 3. Accidentally emailed the salaries of about 1,000 employees to those employees, so everyone got to see how much more money the new guy who was worse than them made. Cost a lot of money to level all those salaries. Story 4. I worked at a pet store for a long time. We had a cyanobacteria outbreak and were bleaching individual tanks, once separated from main sump, and then dechlorinating the tanks and testing them before putting them back in with the main sump system. We had been undergoing the process for about a week at that point, but apparently Ol' Red hadn't been paying attention at all during that time period. She reattached a tank half full of bleach to the main tank system. As I walked into the store, it was my day off. I was just there for lizard food. I just see the majority of the fish moving around listlessly. Then they started death spiraling. I point this out to my coworkers and they start freaking out. One of them starts dumping bottles of dichlorinate into the system. Meanwhile, Ol' Red fishes out her favorite fish, blood parrot cyclids, and starts blowing into their gills, trying to do some crafty approximation of CPR. She ends up throwing them into the separate sick tank in hopes of saving them. Anyway, she killed 99% of the fish, and I had to help shovel out their corpses while crying the entire time. She didn't get fired and never took responsibility for the event. Story 5. At one hotel I worked at, one girl got caught dropping empty drop envelopes into the safe and taking the cash. I'm talking about hundreds of dollars per shift for multiple shifts. She was hot though. I think the owner liked staring at her. By the time I quit, she was still there. Story 6. He was GM, owner was his college roomie, and he was only at work a maximum of 40 hours out of 80 in the 2-week pay period. He would leave in the mornings and go do his other job, leaving me, production manager, to run the place, and then come back towards the end of the day. He still billed the owner 80 hours per 2-week pay period. He did this for at least 6 months. I told the owner when I left the company. They had a long chat. He still works there. His name is Chad. Story 7. Phone call from employee with company car starts with, "So I just hit this dude. Turns out dude had dementia or something. Not the first time he's dashed out into traffic. Family did nothing. No insurance claim, no lawsuit, no nothing. His daughter came outside, yelled at the guy, her dad, and called an ambulance. Cops were involved. No idea how we ended up with no liability." Story 8. It guy deleted all bills of the last 5 days. The accountant came in and yelled at him for 40 minutes straight, went home, and couldn't speak for nearly 3 days. Our CEO didn't fire the IT guy because he was one of his friends. Other coworkers and I had to call about 200 other companies to ask them if they have received a bill from us. At the end, somebody got the glorious idea to ask the mailman where the post sent those bills and saved our asses. If the taxman had found out about this incident, damn. Story 9. Facilities maintenance company I worked for got taken over by a new company. The new company was crap to work for. One of the guys was getting really stressed out, and since his wife made big bucks, she told him to quit. Instead of quitting, he decided to just come and go as he pleased. Stole whatever he wanted, used the shop area and company supplies to work on personal projects for his house. This went on for over a year. They promoted him out of his position into management. Story 10. She came in still drunk from the night before. Her partner calls the director, who shows up and tells her to get a shower and sleep it off. I work for a 911 service. Story 11. A guy I work with has been caught with an escort in his work truck on company time. Twice. I don't know how he still has a job. Story 12. Back when I was doing my student teaching, a teacher punched a student in the face and did not get fired. In his defense, the guy was 17 and thought it would be funny to rip the wig off of a female teacher who was going through chemo. The teacher who did the punching was right there, and it was pretty much an immediate reaction. Not a single person in that school blamed that teacher for what he did. Story 13. It was actually me. I still have no idea what I was thinking. The owners of the company all showed up for a company meeting and gave this 30-minute-long speech about how much they value our work, and they wanted to reward us. They started handing out checks. I open it up and see $2,000. Now I don't make a ton of money, and I was having health issues and been to the ER a few times in the last few months. So this money would literally save me. Everyone is all excited and very surprised. Our management, who were known to be penny pinches that didn't care at all about employees, would do this. Then I see it. The checks were all dated for 2 years from now. They said if we stayed with the company with no write-ups and never miss a day of work, we could cash those checks in 2 years. I just lost it. I walked up the front of the presentation, held my check up, ripped it into shreds and said, "This is some serious bullcrap," and threw the shreds at the owners. Surprisingly, I wasn't fired, probably because I am the highest producing employee in the company, or maybe they realized toying with people like that really wasn't a good idea. Who knows? Story 14. I used to work at a fast food chain restaurant as a cook. One Sunday, it was extra busy around lunchtime, and one of the cashiers kept messing up orders. My assistant general manager, who at the time was cooking with me, got so frustrated with the cashier that he took all the food that was on the grills and fryers and threw it against a wall. Story 15. A new guy in office. We introduce ourselves. He then goes to the boss, which is a woman, slaps her ass from behind, and when she turns around, he kisses her on the lips, grabbing said ass. Turns out they are married. Story 16. Had a tantrum, screamed at me for catching her falsifying reports to the government, smashed her keyboard on her desk, snapped it in two, was openly idiot. I got fired. Story 17. I worked at a pizza place 4 or 5 days a week after school, and everyone else that worked there was a boy, not a single female, but me. The boys that I worked with acted as you would expect, picking on me and always making me the butt of their jokes. I wasn't too bothered. I can handle a joke pretty well. One boy named Tyler took it really far and threatened to abuse me several times and would grab my chest after I repeatedly told him not to. I told the manager about it, and instead of the reaction I had hoped for, my manager laughed in my face. I quit the next day. Story 18. Morbidly obese, obnoxious, giddy coworker. Why don't you quit smoking? You know that's going to hit you. Other good coworker. Trying to tell me to quit smoking is like trying to tell you to quit eating. Both would do wonders for our health, but are not likely to ever happen. I thought for sure he would get the sack for some kind of harassment, but never did. Crazy. Story 19. She got onto the library board, and when she was pushy before, she suddenly became super entitled. She reported me and another employee to our boss for ignoring and mistreating an employee, even though we were just joking around with the patron while we were helping her, and she was playing along. She gave one employee an anxiety attack because she berated him every time she saw him for not doing his job properly, even though he was a perfectly good employee. She kept asking pretty much everyone on the staff to give out other patrons' information, even though that's strictly against confidentiality policy. And she was just generally a mean, miserly old witch hiding behind a thin veneer of sweet old lady. So I got excited when I didn't see her for a while, and I thought they finally got her off the board. But then she came back from an illness, and it turns out all of the staff's legitimate complaints can't unseat age, especially with a scarcity of other people wanting to be on the board. Story 20. I used to work for a company that did inventory audits, and we frequently traveled all over the state to do audits. There was that guy everybody hated because he was a giant douche. A hole who I will call Jumbo Douche. Well, one night we had an audit in a city around 3 hours away in the evening. So once we got done, it was around 2 a.m., so pretty much everyone was tired. And only certain people are allowed to drive the company vehicles we take to out-of-town audits. Well, all the other people who were approved to drive were too tired to, so JD said he would. After about half an hour on the road, and everyone in the van fell asleep. Around this time, JD thought it would be the perfect time to pull out the bottle of vodka be bought when he was filling up on gas and start lining up shots on the passenger seat. Fast forward an hour, and everyone in the van get woken up by JD swerving back and forth on the road and nearly hitting the guardrail on the other side of the road. Well, as predicted, everyone in the van calmly and politely asked JD to pull over. Then 2 guys politely pulled JD out of the van and attempted to calmly kick his head in. When we got back to the office, no one wasted time to call our district manager and try to get JD fired, arrested. Only everyone in the van was telling different stories, with each person exaggerating the events more than the pervious person in the attempt to make his punishment worse. Well, since the stories were so different, our DM couldn't use this as grounds for termination. JD did eventually get fired because he would show up to audits and refuse to work because he had an injured shoulder. He injured his shoulder when the 2 guys in the van from the incident jumped him after work and dislocated his shoulder. Remembered another from my time in retail. I used to work at a store that specialized at selling video games, but basically has since turned into a toy store. Well, like everywhere, Black Friday is a super busy day, and this year, especially since we had some really good deals. So the idea was to have 3 people working throughout the day so we don't get overwhelmed by the amount of customers. So one of our supervisors, who I call Tony, was supposed to be on the opening shift at 6 a.m., decided that it would be a great idea to go out drinking all night on Thanksgiving with his brother until 5 a.m. Well, when Tony's 6 a.m. shift came around, he stumbled into work still drunk off his ass. As expected, the store was non-stop busy since opening. To make matters worse, the 3rd person on that shift decided he would rather sleep in and go shopping instead of coming into work. So the shift was only being covered by our store manager and a crap-faced supervisor. My shift was meant to be from 2 p.m. to closing, but they begged me to come in early so they can send Tony home. And when I got there, the store manager was telling about it and how he tried to see if Tony could work drunk. because there was no way he could run the store by himself. The store manager told me that Tony would frequently just stare at the customer if they asked him a question, got lost in our tiny back room looking for an Xbox, fell asleep on the toilet for 10 minutes, and tried to sell multiple customers the 100-mile warranty for their games. He finally sent Tony home once he got assistant manager to come in at 8 a.m. Tony and the store manager were fired a few months later when they got caught padding store numbers. Story 21. So I work on a Theutic campus and I run a unit that specializes in patients with severe learning difficulties, psychosis, paranoid schizophrenia, and other mental illnesses. Some of our patients are known for being quite aggressive and extremely dangerous when they are unsettled. We found out one shift that we will be having a new nurse with us on shift who isn't familiar with the patients, staff at all. How the shift works is that each staff gets given a patient that they stick with for a few hours before everyone rotates to different patients. My coworker had just got his patient into the bath, so in the meantime, he was cleaning that patient's room. That's when the new nurse came into the room with that patient's morning medication. Having not seen the patients or the staff before, she thought that the staff member cleaning the room was the patient she was supposed to be giving meds to. My coworker quickly realized that she was confused and started playing along, answering all of her questions and trying to imitate the patient's behavior. When she approaches my coworker to give him the patient's meds, he put his arms up in the air and screamed, "Get away from me!" and started to run at her, which is something this patient used to do all the time. She instantly screams and drops the medication. She turns around and runs down the corridor, screaming whilst my coworker was still chasing her. After management had heard about all of this, he just had to apologize, and luckily she saw the funny side of it. But crap. Places of care are usually super strict with that kind of thing, so I'm surprised I'm still working with him to this day. Ha ha ha. Story 22. Without a doubt would have to be my coworker named Robin. She spent a solid year, 3 years, bullying me and others at work, mocking me to other coworkers, complaining daily to management about things I did not do, yelling at and berating anyone she thought was in a lesser position than her, etc. The reason it all started against me was because I had the audacity to ask her to please make sure she did her fair share of chores off the list at end of shift, as she and her sister, who also worked there, had done 4 chores out of 30, before leaving me to do the rest. After that, she just had it out for me. Anyway, after 3 years of constant bullying, that management told me to just ignore and come to them because she didn't like confrontation. One day, she decided to film me while working. Now, I work with animals, and this day I was working on a particularly angry, scared, and terrifying cat. I had harnessed her in a specialized cat harness to prevent injury to her, but would also keep her from jetting off the table at my face. She decided to slink of the table and freak out for a moment. When this happens, the harness catches them, kind of like when you're rock climbing and fall, and they hang out while I calmly return them to the table. While I'm calmly returning the cat to the table and petting her to get her back to a somewhat calm state, suddenly a flashlight is shining in my eyes. The person assisting me and I look over at Robin, who is pointing her phone at me, obviously taking a video with her stupid flash on. So we ask her if she's filming, to which she says no. And then when we point out her flash is on, she acts like she has no idea how that happened and fiddles with her phone until it turns off. The girl assisting me returns to her own table and notices that she is in fact filming, having turned her flash off, and calls her out on it. She says she just wanted to do a video of how crazy that cat is, haha. I was livid because, 1, I knew she never had good intentions when it came to me. 2, she didn't ask me if she could film, and 3, it wasn't funny how the cat was acting. It was scared and stressed, and I was trying to make it as comfortable as possible without getting seriously maimed in the process. Instead of support and an offer for help, I've got my stupid coworker flashing lights in this poor kitty's eyes. I was fed up, so I got the kitty settled in her kennel and then went straight to management to complain. Afterwards, I went back to work. Well, I guess they called her up to talk to her right away. She was livid, yelled at the manager that what she filmed was none of my business, and stomped into the back. At this point, she comes into the back and screams in my face, "If you've got a problem with me, you can say it to my face," and then slams the door on me. I followed her straight out and told her I tried talking to her about it, but she lied about filming. So how was I supposed to confront her about it if she was lying? To which she said she wasn't lying because the other girl helping me had asked her first if she was filming. To which I said, so it wasn't a lie because Christina asked? I don't know how, but I remained calm the whole time she was screaming in my face, jabbing her finger at me, spitting, and literally shaking with rage. Her face was twitching, and I seriously thought she was going to hit me. The manager came in the back and was physically trying to push her away from me while telling her to go cool off, but she didn't want to quit. At one point, I just shrugged and turned to walk back to my table. At which point, she physically charged at me and started yelling again. This rubbed another girl the wrong way, who then stepped in and screamed in Robin's face that she needed to knock at the duck off and go outside. She finally shut up Went outside and called her husband bawling about how I was so mean to her. Management came in an hour later, talked to everyone, who agreed about Robin lying, filming, and totally losing her crap, and watched the store's camera footage, showing her verbally assaulting me while I kept my cool. The funny thing was, the only person whose story didn't match was Robin's, who told a tale of her being so picked on by everyone. The owner knew she was a problem and had lost several employees due to her poor communication and teamwork. But she made him a lot of money. She worked very fast. Doesn't mean her work was high quality, but whatever. Which meant more money for him. He decided to finally actually do something, which was to suspend her for the weekend and write her up for the first time. I was told again to come to management with problems instead of trying to approach her directly, which I exasperatedly explained was what I did. She sent me a non-apology text that night. I'd received 3 similar texts on other occasions about how she doesn't know how to handle confrontation and that she didn't know how to fix this about herself, blah, blah, blah. After she came back, she doubled down on making my life hell, and I quit the moment I found a new job. She was a star employee, but cost him many other people. Funny thing? She just quit to work elsewhere, and he went from 5 full-time employees in my area when I was there to 1 full-time and 1 part-time. He just barely hired because no one else could stand her treatment and his licking her ass. Story 23. I was at a men's club in Vegas with an ad exec who charged $13,000 on his corporate card over the course of a very long night. Not a damn thing happened to him at work. Story 24. My company is so topsy-turvy. We are forever losing people and never can keep any new hires. One of my coworkers was harassed and propositioned for company by a disgusting old duck we work with. I was sure he was going to be fired for it. He wasn't. He was spoken to, and that was that. Story 25. I have one about myself. 19-year-old me back in 2008 got a job at a pharmaceutical company as a tablet coder. I had been there maybe 5 months, and work was slow. A guy in another department asked me to help move some pallets of calcium tablets with an electric pallet jack. Being the young, curious man I was, I decided to see how high the jack went after double stacking some pallets. I was pretty impressed how high up this thing went, so impressed I forgot to bring it back down before moving. After going forward like 5 feet, I took out a sprinkler head and was shocked when I got hit in the face and upper body with dirty water that hadn't been purged in 10 years. At a pharmaceutical company, which is questionable. Anyway, water just kept coming out. Maintenance guy told me after the fact it was spraying 110 gallons per minute, 3.75 liters for my non-American friends. I ended up losing the company around $200,000 by shutting down several packaging lines and 1 manufacturing process. There was 2 inches of water on the ground. It took me and 2 other guys 3 hours to direct the water into the drains placed throughout the plant. This was all at from 6 p.m. to about 11 p.m. At the end of it, I sent a huge apology email to the directors of manufacturing and packaging who were 1 level below the president. They wrote me up and let me keep my job. I have no damn clue how because I was on probation from being a new hire. The only thing that changed was the training on the electric pallet jack. It now includes to check the height of your load, not just the width of the load for any obstructions. 6. We have a girl who calls out for almost every single one of her shifts. When she doesn't call out, she begs everyone to take her shifts. Out of every 10 shifts she is given, she only ever actually shows up for 1 or 2. Whenever she does show up, she almost always asks to leave early anyway for any of the many excuses she has up her sleeve. She has received 7 serious write-ups for her attendance, reliability. Most people are sacked after 3 serious write-ups. Somehow she keeps sneaking on by. Every time she gets another one, I think, okay, this will be the one, but she still somehow works here. She was actually fired once in the past for these very same patterns, but for some reason they let her come back only for her to pull the same crap all over again. Anyway, right in the middle of our busy season, this most recent summer she asked for 3 weeks off. She was told that they would give her 1 week, but anything more than that would be considered her resignation. So she took the 3 weeks off anyway, and during that time all of her scheduled shifts were left uncovered. That's at least 15 no call, no shows, and we were always left understaffed and screwed because of it. Yet after her little vacation, she resumed working with no repercussions. Nothing was ever said about it. We've had to let people go for far, far less. I don't understand it. I like her as a person, and when she is here, she is a great worker, but that's the problem. She's never actually here. Story 27. When I was a barista, we would get weekly markouts where we could take home a bag of coffee or tea for free. Just one, though. My coworker was this fat, angry, compulsive, lying idiot that everyone hated. One day, she got caught trying to steal one of our other coworkers' weekly markout at one of our stores in another town. Awesome coworker she was trying to steal from another coworker. So when her name popped up in the system after Fat Idiot gave them her employee numbers, they knew she wasn't who she said she was. She threw a huge hissy fit, and one of the workers there took video of it. We only found out about it when the GM of that store came to our store and showed our GM the video. Still wasn't fired. Story 28. Not sure which one is better. I work on exotic cars for clarification. Old dealership I worked for. Car sales manager got caught taking a Lamborghini without company permission to pick up a date for a baseball game and ended up rear-ending someone. He still works there. Subsequent dealership I worked for, guy went to move an exotic race car. Thought the big red button on the dash was to start the car. That was the mobile fire extinguisher button. Filled the entire car up with fire extinguisher fluid. He quit 6 months after this. Story 29. I work with this woman who should have been fired over a year ago based on the company's policies. She was hired by her friend, surprise, and quickly figured out she doesn't have to do crap because of it. We work an express restaurant, so lots of rules for good reason. Just in the past 6 months, she has caused multiple customers to complain about her specifically on surveys, caused other customers to call corporate to complain about her rudeness, broke a fryer, 2 thermometers, a sink, and 4 knives, opened the store with no paper towels or sanitizer. Huge no-no, we could have been shut down if the inspector came. Oh, and left the safe wide open and the doors unlocked for the entire night. This all when she was actually working and not hiding in the back texting or talking on the phone. No one knows how she isn't fired, let alone demoted. Another coworker. And I were promoted to her spot with the promise that we would take her place when she was fired. We happily took on the responsibilities and waited for the actual promotion, so we could have the titles and matching pay. Yeah, she's still damn here, haven't gotten that raise or any of the others promised, and still technically ranked under her. I just saw I have to work with her tomorrow, and I'm pissed. Story 30. I worked in a really small department, 4 people, was the youngest by 30 years and also the newest employee. I picked up fast, which wasn't hard as 2 out of 3 of my coworkers could barely run a computer. So about 6 months and my manager goes on a 2-week vacation, and during that time, my boss has a sit-down talk with me and the other 2 guys. I had to leave about 6 times to answer the phone, counter, and every time I walked back in, things were more and more tense. I finally pieced together that the meeting was my boss telling these 2 guys, 3x my age, and with seniority to me that I was in charge of them, even when the manager came back. Jay was grumbling and cursing, and my boss called him out on it. Jay told him he didn't want me in charge, and if he and Ralph were such failures to just fire him because he was not going to get any better, and he certainly wasn't going to listen to me. I could see the words about to come out of my boss's mouth, but he refrained and didn't fire Jay. Jay did get fired for being incompetent a few months down the road, though. Story 31. Guy who I work with is late by an hour every day to work, and he stops working an hour before the day is over. Literally a quarter of his day is spent not working. Like the heck? Story 32. There's 2. I work somewhere where at risk high schoolers come in to learn about working in a manufacturing environment, and we train them in the abilities they'll need. A disabled employee choked one of the students. Another employee shut a machine that hadn't been down in over 14 years for 3 days because he did something with it that I told him the machine wouldn't do, and he didn't want to listen to his trainer. After no call, no showing once that week and twice the week before. That guy was a chronic duck-up, and I was sure that'd be the last straw. Story 33. Was on a big project where clueless manager was required to coordinate delivery of cement to a remote site. The remote site had its own deep water jetty, but otherwise all of the equipment required to pump the cement off the ship needed to be in place so that the cement could be received. Ship shows up. Trucks, crews, pumps, and storage containers either not ready, still in transit, or sitting around on site not ready for unloading. Tempest fugits. Ship captain is having a damn fit and they're charging $25,000 a day for demurrage on the cargo. 11 days pass. Owner of shipping line calls our project director, screams at him a bit, and threatens to pump the cement out and dump it off the ship if the unloading doesn't start within 36 hours. Several plane flights of equipment and crew later, unloading commences within 36 hours. Total cost to the project was over $1 million. The same or similar event happened 3 more times. Final settlement went to lawyers and mediation for over $4 million. CM was never sacked. Story 34? I have a really relevant story for. So I got my buddy CJ a job at my gas station, and it's his first day. He was working a register and was doing pretty good. My manager was messing with the cigarettes or something behind us. I hear CJ say from his register, "Come on, Grandma, hurry up. You've used a debit card before." My manager looked like a deer in headlights. Both of us just look at him. I'm damn furious that he just ducked up the job that I vouched for him to get. He looks confused for a second, then starts to chuckle. It was his actual grandmother. We all had a good laugh, and it was a good day. Story 35. Violated policy and procedures constantly. In the same way shortly after being talked to about it. Constantly did a sloppy job, then would dump it on somebody else. Denied it or played dumb if anyone tried to talk to him about it. Supervisors had to have screenshotted proof if you reported his ass for anything because of this. Lied to your face if you quizzed him about an issue he was trying to dump on you. He never got seriously reviewed, written up or talked to because his buddy and roommate was one of the supervisors, who would intercept and handle any complaint about him. He'd always raise a stink if any other sups tried to mess with his many friends on the staff. This same sup would then turn around and persecute you if you reported his buddies. Guess why I don't work there anymore? Story 36. Not my coworker, but my boss. He got the company sued for harassment. He got switched to night shifts as a punishment, and while there impregnated a girl. The owner decided to promote him back to GM and sent him to corporate training, where he got kicked out for having a hand tattoo and got caught smoking by the company VP. The owner then gave him money for a bus ride home. He ended up cussing the owner out for not getting him a plane ticket home and quit. Story 37. I have two. Same company, 6 months apart. 1. My supervisor at a company that does contact work inside plants. We'll call him M. M is notoriously bad with money, not malicious, just sometimes he really doesn't realize what he's doing. Anyways, he borrowed $500 from the company to treat our clients to a nice meal while he was on an out-of-town trip, ended up getting drunk and blowing it all at a casino. Company found out. All they made him do was pay it back. He still works there, and this was not his only duck-up. 2. Coworker at same company we'll refer to as T. T, in addition to working at the company, also owned a failing restaurant with his wife. It's legit. Company knows about it and is cool with it. Unfortunately, for a while it was totally consuming him and his performance was failing. They decided they had to let it go. When T's supervisor, who was about 5 feet 7 inches and weighed 150 pounds, tried to fire T, 6 feet 4 inches and 300 pounds, T says, "Well, I guess I have nothing left to lose," and then proceeded to flip boss's desk one-handed, and literally picked boss up and pinned him to the wall before the rest of the guys in the office could pull him off. For some reason, they decided to give it a second chance. He still works there. Story 38. At the same shop, but 2 different coworkers. First was caught stealing from the till twice, but was fired for not showing up, which is really essentially being fired for quitting. The other smoked cigarettes in the public restroom because he couldn't poop without smoking. Why he didn't just wait until he got home, I could never figure out. Story 39. Let me start by saying I used to work for an extraction company. We worked with flammable gases. If safety procedures are followed, it's safe. But if you F up, it could lead to an explosion. We had a guy who should have been fired 10 times over, but these are the worst. He showed up hours late, on days where we had time-sensitive work that couldn't be completed without him, still drunk from the night before. We know that not only from the smell, but because he told us, including his bosses, the owners. Oh, and one of those times he was coming down from rolling the night before, again he told us. One of those times he thought it was okay because, hey, it was Cinco de Mayo. It fell on like a Monday that year. This happened 3 freaking times and he didn't even get written up. Then another time he left for a delivery that should have taken an hour 15 tops. After a couple hours, we started to get worried, so we gave him a call. No answer. We even checked traffic accident reports. We were so concerned. Then called the dispensary he delivered to, and they said he made it and had left long ago. Okay, so he's not answering his phone. He has $14,000 something in cash and the company debit card. He better have a great excuse, or hopefully, this jackass will finally get fired. 5 hours later, he calls our boss back and says that he had some personal things to work out, so he took off for the day, like it was no big deal. They decide that's worth writing up, but decide not to fire him since he dropped off the cash and card at like 8 at night in their home mailbox. Are you damn kidding me? Finally, a few days later, they fired him when he just didn't show up ever again and told them he was looking for another job, but not quitting yet. Story 40. My coworker had to substitute for me to do some technical services at a petrochemical plant. He instructed the customer to pump some chemical into the system to boost the pH. He, however, never told them to stop, and they ended up pumping the entire 14,000-gallon container of chemicals into the unit, which stopped production for 2 days, and they had to dump the solution in the process, which costs like $75,000 or so to make. Customer was pissed and refused to pay for his visit. I'm glad they didn't sue us. Meanwhile, he continues to sit in his office and duck up everything he touches. Story 41. I work in childcare. One day, we had a fire emergency during nap where all the rooms started smelling like gas. We wake up the kids in our room, get them outside, and wait for the all clear. 5 minutes pass, and the firefighters are carrying out a preschooler that had been left asleep on her cot and completely forgotten about by not 1, but 2 teachers. Everyone was sure they were going to get fired. You know, for endangering a child's life in a fire emergency, but no, just got retrained and moved from that room. The next week, someone else got fired for back-talking a manager. But you know, who cares about the safety of the children? Just don't question the managers. Story 42. Oh, Kevin. I worked at a Target during my later years of high school and had a lovely coworker named Kevin. His parents were rich and essentially forced him to apply for a job to get a sense for the service industry, since he would never have to work a day in his life. The whole mommy and daddy are rich and I can sue you cliché is true with this waffle. It was a regular day in the store, but at one point our manager asked Kevin to help stock the shelves for Valentine's Day. Apparently, Kevin bought some substances with his parents' money and decided to go to work as high as Snoop Dogg's bedroom. Kevin and I were stocking the shelves when I looked over at him, and there he was, breaking open the Valentine's heart-shaped chocolate things and slurping out the cream filling. By the time I saw him doing this, it was too late. He slurped at least 20 hearts dry. At this point, I am pretty pissed, so we get the manager over to knock some sense into him. Kevin is still high, but now decides to actually try to stock the shelves since the manager was here. Kevin is a short little crap nugget, so we needed a ladder for stocking the top layers. In Kevin's intoxicated waltz, he knocked a bag of candy off the top shelf and went down to get it before tumbling on his ass right off the ladder. The manager never filed a substances report to corporate for some reason, although I highly suspect it was because his family was rich and influential in the area. Needless to say, I quit that day. Damn, Kevin. Story 43. I had a coworker named Ron, name changed. Ron was a laid-back guy, and you could tell that right away when talking with him. He was a very likable guy, and to this day I'm pretty sure that's the only reason he was able to stick around. Anyway, Ron loved to talk, like nonstop. It was all or nothing for him. Either he sat there quietly or he just kept on going until somebody stopped him. Well, our manager was the micromanagement type, and would constantly get irritated with Ron not only for talking, but for distracting the rest of us. She would yell at any of us for talking, but she always let Ron get away with it a little bit more. One day, Ron was feeling especially chatty. He loudly admitted that he was high on Percocets. After a few of us laughed, he told us that he gets high on Percocet every single morning before work. He told us that we had never seen him sober. Walking over. She tells us to keep it down and get back to work, making no mention of Ron's comments. But Ron just keeps on talking about superhero movies, Netflix docs, Michael Jordan. Basically just a bunch of crap that had no relation to our work. Manager comes back over, tells him to be quiet again. This happened 3 more times before lunchtime finally rolled around. Ron gathered his things and went to lunch. After 30 minutes, he hadn't come back. After an hour, he still hadn't come back. In fact, he still hadn't come back by the time I was ready to leave, after clocking out and walking downstairs. I see Ron passed out on one of the tables in the cafeteria, showed up to work the next day, and my manager never said a word, and everything went back to normal. I no longer worked that job, but just before I left, Ron had been promoted. My mind was damn blown. Story 44. This one still irritates me. So I'm working second shift till 10 p.m., and my coworker is supposed to come in at 9:30 to open up her register so I can close down. At 9:45, I try to call her cell to see if she's just running late. It's been disconnected. I give her till 10:15 to show up. We've all been late. No reason to have the manager give her a strike. Then call the manager. No answer. I try 4 assistant managers. Still no answer. I try everybody else who's capable of working third shift. There's extra training involved before the store can let you work third, per policy, and nobody can come in. Finally, an assistant manager calls back and basically begs me to work the third shift, and passive-aggressively threatens to fire me. We might have to make some cutbacks in the future. I'd hate for you to be one of them. I need the job, so I do it. The next day, the idiot works, after I chewed out the manager and all 4 assistants for allowing this crap. She tells me her second job offered her extra hours, so she took it. She missed her full-time job without calling off to go and strip. She wasn't fired because the manager would have to cover her shifts until a replacement was found. Fun fact, I worked 2 jobs. One full-time first shift, the other part-time at this store. I ended up working from 7 a.m. on day 1 to 3 p.m. on day 2. My only breaks were an hour each day to drive from one work to the other, not counting those breaks. I worked 30 hours essentially in a row. Damn you. Story 45. Worked with an older doctor that pulled his junk out to show a nurse. A day later, we all get called in for the investigation. Then 12 of us have to do mandatory harassment training and role play. Dude who pulled it out doesn't show up. He gets a week suspended for being a no-show, never does the class, and then gets moved to department chair a few months later. Learned then that sometimes the world makes no sense. Story 46. Coworker pulled a no-call, no-show on New Year's Eve. This left the manager on duty and me to run the store completely on our own from 2 p.m. until we closed at 7. You wouldn't think that a pet store would be super busy on New Year's, but we were. And it seemed like every other person who came in needed a fish or some kind of assistance. I had so many customers get mad at me because they needed help in one department, and it took forever for someone to come over. Because there were literally 2 employees in the entire store, and one of them, me, couldn't leave the register. At one point, a customer's dog pissed in the middle of an aisle, and she didn't clean up after it. All Maud and I could do for about an hour was set up a wet floor sign up next to the puddle, because neither of us had a spare few minutes to mop and disinfect the floor. This same coworker had already pulled a no-call, no-show in the past, and had gotten sent home once or twice for copping an attitude with the managers. I thought for sure that this last incident would be the final straw, but no. I had the next couple days off, and the next time I came in, the jackass was standing behind the register, reading a magazine because there was nobody waiting to check out in that moment. And forbid he find something constructive to do. He ended up quitting a week later, not bothering to give 2 weeks' notice. Maud and I were happy to see him go. Story 47. Pizza place. It was a busy night, and a couple to-go orders took too long, and the owner comes in raising hell with the guy rolling dough about ticket times. The situation escalated quickly, and the guy started cursing back and forth with the owner. Guy screams something like, "Damn, fire me if you think I'm doing such a crap job, old man." Owner, "Are you damn with me?" Guy, "No, damn, fire me, do it. I damn hate this job, hate my life, and I hate this damn restaurant. Fire me." Owner apologized later. Story 48. Worked at BK. This guy catcalls ladies behind their backs all the time, and as she and her 4 daughters were leaving, he said, "Man, that ass is just falling out of those jeans." Lady heard him, turned around, and demanded the person that said it. Eventually, she kept driving around through the drive-thru and taking pictures of us inside. I thought he was going to get fired for sure, but months after I quit, I checked back in, and sure enough, he was running drive-thru. Story 49. Really small company, and longtime employee was using the bathroom to do substances. She would always go into the bathroom for an hour or so, and sometimes would show up for work looking half dead. We all knew it, and it was always kind of something that we just joked about. One day after she went home for the day, we decided to snoop in the bathroom and found her huge stash of substances. My supervisor found out and informed our boss. Because she had been an employee for so long, and the owner of the company liked her so much, he ended up helping her out and sending her for treatment. She was gone for a year, and when she came back, she looked amazing, like a totally different person. To this day, she's totally clean. She still works here with us, and she's a totally different person. I'm really happy she was able to get help because honestly, the day she left for treatment, she was on death's doorstep. It's great to have an employer that actually cares about its employees like a family. Story 50. Not my coworker, but a friend told me this tale a few years back. The guy was a little kiss-ass who has no opinion for himself, and he was an idiot to anyone else with any brains so that he could keep his superior position within his group. Well, his supervisor had burned some bridges with his higher-ups and kind of knew his time was limited. Well, the supervisor found another gig and decided that since his research was his, and not the institution, he was going to take it with him. So he got the kiss-ass to come in late during the weekend to help him physically carry out equipment. Anyone would have found this suspicious and said something, but he didn't. Following week crap exploded and he was questioned and threatened to be sued. Well, months later and years now, he still has job with another group. Friend was pissed. Story 51. Our HR department had to cut so many employees for a layoff, and the person in charge of making sure they weren't laying off essential personnel, or at least leave one person who could support a system, just picked names at random from a list based on pay. She accidentally laid off myself and the only other person in the company that supported the system we lovingly call the core product. When we told them it had to be a mistake, they just took it as us begging for our jobs and disregarded our warnings. This resulted in the company having to request emergency training services from the vendors, who were more than happy to fly across the country and charge roughly double our yearly salaries to do a 2-week seminar. Turns out, however, that you can't learn everything you need to know about a system so complex in 2 weeks, especially if you haven't ever used it before. And they ended up rehiring both myself and the other person into positions where we earn more money and have less overall responsibility. I found out specifically who made the mistake after being rehired, and despite costing the company about $400,000, she did not get herself terminated. I am currently enjoying my new job, but I'm definitely more than a little shaken in terms of company loyalty. Story 52. Teenage coworker was told to go check and pull any expired or near expiration date canned pet food. Said coworker was not heard from for hours. Manager goes to check and teenager is sleeping, propped up against the food racks, while kind of half sitting in a carriage. I mean, sound asleep. Manager gathers all other employees to come and look. We all laugh and make noise, and he never wakes. Finally, manager shakes him, and he falls off cart. Manager tells him to go nap in his car. Teenager naps in his car for another hour, all while still punched in. Story 53. I worked with a young lady that was hired above her capabilities and continued to perform below expectations on a daily basis. We were a professional consulting firm, yet she'd arrived to work in sweatpants and a top that would freely expose her midriff. For months, she completely stood out as underdressed, underqualified, and with no upside for the future. At the first Christmas party she went to, the married CEO owner ended up dancing with her and spent an inordinate amount of time grabbing her butt on the dance floor while of us drones looked on. She was the talk of the office for weeks. A few months later, she pulled a real dipcrap move that would cost the company tens, if not hundreds, of thousands of dollars and piss off the client. A mega-large multinational to no end. This was type of duck-up that would inevitably result in a firing or resignation. I asked her if she felt her job was in jeopardy. Her reply, They can't fire me. The boss grabbed my ass at the Christmas party. A couple years later, she was made a project manager. Yikes. Story 54. I work at a golf course and a coworker of mine flipped a brand new golf cart onto its side. It was raining out. The asphalt was slippery and he was driving it down a slope. He hit the brakes and tried to drift, but just put the cart on its side. My boss, who was out golfing, came in to see the damage. Not extensive, but a bit more than a scratch. And my boss didn't even raise his voice at my coworker, just told him to be more careful next time. We all thought for sure that this coworker was going to get canned on the spot. Story 55. I was that guy. I worked at Starbucks for about 4 years as a shift manager. During the last 8 months of working there, we got a new manager that was absolutely horrible. She hired a bunch of new baristas that had no idea what they were doing and then basically left running the store to myself and another shift. We had been there the longest at this point. The worst new hire happened to be this incredibly stupid girl named Katie. I hated Katie with a burning passion. She was seriously the dumbest person that I've ever worked with. I can't remember what I asked her on that fateful day, but her response broke me. I shouted, "Damn Christ, Katie, you are the most worthless piece of crap I've ever worked with," while flicking her off and leaving through the back door, all in front of customers. I didn't come back until 30 minutes before close, so I could count down the tills, about 5 hours later. Didn't even get written up for it, but I left a month later. Those last 8 months were really getting to me mentally, though, so I'm glad I quit. Story 56. Boss at the job I had before this one was stealing money from the drawer. Her ex had custody of their 3 kids because she's a puss. He passed from a work accident, and she needed money for transportation for them since her car was repossessed. Regional management and asset protection got involved. Ex-boss gets promoted to district leader. Needless to say, I quit shortly after. Current job is for an in-store bank. Assistant manager is constantly out of balance, and nobody bats an eyelash. We got a shipment of cash in, and we have never been short. The one day the assistant manager is responsible for taking in the shipment, she convinces upper management and operations that the shipment was just short $3,600. Many unethical practices. Yes, we have reported them. They choose not to discipline her because her sales are best in the district. Have I mentioned my second week of training a coworker and I caught her stealing someone's cart of paid for groceries? Story 57. During the first week of camp, while we were still in counselor training mode, one of the counselors was injured with a particularly hard hip thrust during a game of footy. Cue my co-nurse running off to find her a Claritin, allergy med, for the swelling. My other coworkers and counselors all exchanged confused, worried glances, wondering if she was joking. She honestly believed that it would work to reduce the swelling, despite me explaining the difference between pathogen-related swelling and blunt trauma. She was furious with me for overruling her when I said no and instead grabbed an ice pack. Due to bureaucratic reasons, we weren't allowed to fire, switch her out, and instead my coworkers and I had to keep a close eye on her for the rest of the summer, terrified that she would poison someone. Story 58. So there was this really escorty girl, Susie. She openly flirted with any guy who looked at her. She was shaped kind of like a potato sack that wore leggings. Once a few coworkers and I were put into a small department. We were able to talk about whatever were wanted. One guy brings up why his lead was fired. One day he was going into the supply room for something and sees her and this other guy, who was married, having sex. He tells his lead and she's pissed. This was the second time this happened. She reports it to her boss, and boss tells her to shut up about it or she'll lose her job. We were pretty sure Susie was damn someone very high up, because all the middle management knew about it, yet nothing was done. Story 59. There are a few duck-ups at work where people didn't get fired. And while it all comes down to circumstances and blah, 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 there are some things that you should really fire people for. Like not picking up a child with a car seat at daycare, but the one absolute unimaginable duck-up that seriously could have ended someone's life was when one of the staff members gave a resident the wrong dose of medics. A difference significant enough that if she had been 5 minutes later to the hospital for fluids and whatever else they did, she could have died or had significant brain damage. It terrified the staff and the residents who trust us to hand out meds every day. We were all positive they would never come to work again, but alas, they were never fired. Story 60. Bakery. No call, no show. Doesn't respond to any text or phone calls made to him for hours. At some point, he calls in from someone else's phone claiming his phone isn't working. He's sick and blah, blah, blah. Shows up 4 or 5 hours later, fully dressed in street clothes. Asks the woman working front counter if the owner is there today. She tells him no, so he walks out and leaves without another word. Never talks to the supervisor or anyone else. Shows up the next day like nothing ever happened. What the heck? Story 61. I work for a small tech company. My boss calls me on Monday morning and I think, crap, this is early for him. He has the worst tone of voice and tells me we need to talk. I need to meet him in the boardroom. Damn. So I meet him. The developer screwed something up during the data migration and dumped our tables last night. We lost all of our user data, 40,000 people. Double damn. And we don't have a backup, triple damn. One of the worst weeks of my life. Story 62. Damn, this one just happened on Monday to my wife. She works in a small auto body shop. She's in charge of incoming money, and the other woman is in charge of outgoing. Her coworker hasn't paid federal taxes since the first of the year. The boss owes $130,000 in back taxes and penalties. He says he's not going to fire her, but it will take some work to see if he can stay in business. Story 63. Guy took a city dump truck through the drive-thru with the bed up, ripped everything up, and drove off. He drove back to the office and told his superior he was going home sick. He was long gone by the time any of us heard what happened. In the event of a crash, it's city policy that the driver has to take a substances test. By going home, he avoided that. Over the next few weeks, he burned up all of his paid time off, which allowed him to postpone the substances test. He just didn't show up for a few more weeks after the vacation time was expended, and then one day, decides he's going to pee into a cup. Passed, cleared for work. Story 64. My coworker read a rumor on Twitter that a celebrity was dead, didn't wait for confirmation from their publicist, and put the story on the national wire of the country's largest news chain as breaking news. The celebrity called our office an hour later, very much alive, stating he was just in a dentist appointment. I have no idea how he didn't get fired. Story 65. Underage new employee got caught drinking on shift in front of customers at a retail job. Later had to get bailed out of jail by a manager. Kept their job. How? No clue. Story 66. Not my coworker, but a friend of mine pulled his junk out while doing some stocking at a pharmacy. He helicoptered at another employee and got reported by them. When they talked to him about it, he flat out denied everything. They gave him a raise and thanked him for his honesty. Story 67. My former coworker Timmy says to me, "Watch this," as we were walking back into the warehouse from lunch. He then proceeds to hop onto a pallet rider and drifts it at full speed into a guardrail, setting the alarm off. Setting the alarm off is supposed to be an automatic substances test, and at the time, we were smoking pretty tough on our lunch breaks. Thought for sure that was the last I'd see of Timmy as he walked up with LP, but he was back in a little under a half hour. Story 68. The assistant manager at a pizza place I worked at got into a shouting match with a customer and told her he was going to go piss in her gas tank. It was over something stupid. Me and the GM were in the back and heard all of it. GM went and talked to the lady. Guy didn't get fired. That one coworker, what happened? Story 1. One of the supervisors finally confronted him about the ever-present smell of rum on his breath and his ever-present yet lighter in shade bottle of soda. After being told he'd be given a breathalyzer at work, he claimed he had never been so insulted by an accusation in his life and immediately quit, never letting go of his soda bottle. Story 2. He started making fart noises every time my other coworker bent over. To get something out of a case, pick something up, whatever it was, he was flarping it up and laughing it off. We fired him when he tried to fist fight a customer. Story 3. Turns out her cancer was faked, and she scammed us all out of $100,000. Now she's in prison. Amanda Riley. I worked with her around 2015 to 2016. Story 4. Management finally took notice and reorganized so that he no longer had any staff under him, but gave him a higher title and almost no work in the process. A short time later, they used layoffs as a reason to get rid of him entirely. But he parlayed his higher title into a more powerful, better-paying job elsewhere, where they're now trying to figure out how to get rid of him. Basically, he failed up. That's what you get when you have hiring managers who get starstruck at an Ivy League education without checking if there's any substance behind it. Story 5. He missed work unexpectedly. The next morning, the FBI showed up and went through his desk. They only found a post-it that read, "Too slow, FBI." It also had a smiley face on it. Story 6. He was a strange-looking person, also smelled strange and said strange things to some people, none of which was very good for a temp looking to be made permanent. Words were had with him in private, and to everyone's surprise, he turned it around. He's a strange-looking person in general, but he addressed the issues around personal hygiene and his general appearance. More groomed and professional-looking, and he changed how he interacted with people. He got his permanent position and seems to be well-liked overall. Just shows it's not too late. Someone could be that coworker because of issues in their private life. A few discreet words from a superior can make all the difference. Just knowing someone is paying attention can be enough to start a change for the better. Story 7. He started getting a 1,000-yard stare while in the office. He sat at his computer and stared at the monitor, which is what we all did, except his monitor was off. One day, he didn't come in at all, and a few days later, we learned that he had been arrested in another state for stealing a car and attacking the police that arrested him. Story 8. It was obvious he was a hard drinker. What took the weirdness to the next level was when I was almost home and a voice called out my name, and it was him. He had actually stalked me. I'm a thin 5 feet 5 inches woman. He tried to be casual about it and extended an invitation to a neighborhood bar. Inner monologue went from "this guy followed me from Manhattan to Brooklyn on the subway," whoa, to "he doesn't live in this neighborhood," to "does he know which apartment I live at? Maybe I should walk to the fire station and call a roommate." His voice trailed off, seeing the expression on my face, which probably looked like "you have bad idea" written all over you. He was a raging functional alcoholic who was on the razor's edge of slipping into dysfunction. If you've met the binge-drinking college student whose idea of bravado is how much they can put away in one night, and still function the next day, he still had that outlook on life in his early 30s. Yet he wasn't aggressive, just accepted my slow, no thanks, and shuffled away. Instead of talking to the boss, I kept polite distance. He never tested that boundary again. A year later, I left that job. Interesting to see the reactions. He was obviously close to destroying himself. Didn't want to nudge that situation over the edge by involving management if it could be avoided. That said, getting followed home by a coworker was legit terrifying. He had been testing boundaries on the job. A couple of times he was rifling through my desk when I returned from lunch looking to borrow office supplies without permission. Had shooed him away in the moment. Yet between that guy's swagger and the occasions he had leered at me, there was no telling what boundaries he would respect. He went right up to the line. The next several months were stressful on the way home, especially during winter when the sun set before the end of the workday. This incident was one of the reasons I moved to Manhattan at more than double the rent for a doorman building. My head hopes he got himself dried out without losing his career. My skin still crawls at the thought of him. Never asked what became of him after leaving that job. Story 9. College junior, 1980 AS. Office job, proofreading. I get a new partner. A few years older than me, army-style haircut, very fit and muscular. He is nervous, so I give him easy stuff and bring him along slowly. After a week or so, he relaxes and tells his story. He joined a cult as a teen, the Moonies. He rose through the ranks until he was running a team of teens traveling the country raising money for the cult. They sold flowers and magazine subscriptions door to door in malls, train stations, and airports. He drove them in a van, and they all slept in one room at cheap motels. His job was to watch them, keep them in line and earning. He did it for years, always traveling, barely sleeping until he finally had a breakdown and ended up in a psych ward. Working with me was his first real job back in the world. We did fine. He was always on time and, like me, read books during downtime. I found out from my supervisor that they gave him to me because if he went berserk, I had the best chance of surviving 6 feet 4 inches and 230 pounds. Partner eventually requested a move to the day shift, and I got an opera singer for my new amigo. Day shift is busier than nights. Ex-Mooney couldn't cope without my support and went Hulk smash and destroyed the office until the cops came. Story 10. He got a forklift stuck in the grass while drunk. They tested him, and he was positive for substances, too. On his way out, he tried to argue. But half the warehouse gets high. The next day, there was a random substances test, and half the warehouse was sacked. Story 11. The small company. The dude who absolutely stank, and I mean, you could tell he had been in a room 10 minutes later. It was so bad. After about a year at a staff part, I think someone had the courage to ask him what was up with the odor. Turns out he showered regularly, but he was eating medicinal garlic oil, which caused the terrible smell. Oddly, he had no idea. He switched to a different type of garlic oil, and the smell went away almost instantly. Great guy was at the company several years afterwards. Story 12. We worked at a group home agency specifically for mental health. Still, something I feel incredible guilt and shame for not being able to do more about earlier. Ex-coworker openly said she searched for married men to fool around with and seemed proud about it. Big yikes. She had a second job at another agency that worked more as a halfway house. I worked every shift nearly every day at our shared agency, so I was scheduled with her every few days or so. It wasn't until she confided in me that one of the married men in her Rolodex might be married to a woman in one of the homes in an agency in town. There weren't many, and it's not our shared group home agency we were both employed at because the clients we had weren't married. Most were barely 18. I was loud about how wrong it was. She said she didn't even know the woman or that it was for sure a client at the agency. He had confided in my coworker about the struggles of having a mentally ill wife in a home, and he kept it very vague as to where she was. I called the applicable state agency to report her behavior, and they said, while it was incredibly bad taste, no HIPAA laws were being broken, and I didn't have enough information to prove it was. I looked for advice everywhere, and everyone told me that if you can't confirm it is a client in the agency, and it's not her specific client, then you can't report it accurately. I was honestly kind of shamed for getting involved in private lives. I didn't know names or locations of the second agency clients. Homes, as it was all protected by HIPAA, we really do take that seriously, and weaseling the information out of her was so damn upsetting to me. I kept the colleague relationship fresh despite wanting to vomit when scheduled with her, mostly because I felt that this was wrong and wanted to gather as much evidence as I could to prove it. I actually considered applying for a job at the other agency so I could ask around freely. I found out the agency name and the current house she worked at. I wrote in an anonymous email with my information so far, and it went unreturned. A week or so later, she told me she was reassigned to a new house, and for sure the woman lives there by confirmation of the husband after bragging about a new position. She talked down on the client and started telling the husband when she refused her meds, to leave her, etc. He has the right to know that she's not even trying to get better. I will never forget feeling upset enough to throw up, but keeping it hidden to press her for more information. I needed to know where the house was and the husband's name, hoping the client had the same last name and someone, anyone, could connect the dots. As a bonus to being loose-lipped and trashy, this woman let slip the client's name. After finding out everything, I called everyone I could. Head of departments, the State Department, our manager at our shared agency, her manager at her second agency. I did not stop, and admittedly, it probably seemed crazy to some people how obsessed I was with getting this woman banned from working with vulnerable populations. I had everything I needed to finally end this. She was fired from both jobs and threatened to kill me because it was obviously me that told people. No idea if applicable agencies gave her a VA report through the state, but I strongly advocated for one. I blocked her on everything and ended up moving a short while later back to my small hometown. Imagine my face when I walk into my local gynecology clinic a year later and she's sitting at the front desk. Story 13. I used to work for this extremely unethical medical device company. The owners had really strong timeshare salesman energy and would say or do anything they thought would make sales or improve their bottom line. As a result, most employees, myself included, got grossed out and left within a year or two, with the only one staying having something deeply wrong with them, either ethically or professionally. As a result, a lot of crafty behavior was tolerated from senior employees because the owners couldn't retain anyone else. Enter Bill. In the year I worked alongside Bill, I watched him ask a brown-skinned coworker how his people prayed. Said coworker was born and raised in Maryland. In a conversation about how people's personalities change when they drink, suggested to another coworker that he probably got more autistic. Said coworker was not and had never implied to be autistic. During the George Floyd protests, assured everyone in the lunchroom that he and his church had an impressive stockpile of weapons in case that kind of civil unrest cropped up in our town. That's just the stuff I witnessed firsthand. Pretty much everyone had similar stories of Bill. The straw that finally broke the camel's back came during a company picnic. We were playing cornhole and Bill, unprompted, said very loudly that I should be careful not to throw the beanbags towards the name of the only 2 black employees in the company, because Black Lives Matter, and then grinned like he'd told the funniest joke in the world. Everyone, including the 2 employees in question, heard him. Afterwards, as I was explaining the incident to HR, our HR director shook her head and said, "This is really bad. You know this isn't Bill's first strike." "Yeah, no crap, Stephanie." Story 14. Oh, Gregory? Gregory started getting more and more ducked up at work, to the point where he was taking 4-hour-long 15-minute breaks. Boss wouldn't fire him because, quote, "he's not as high today as he was yesterday." Once, his mother showed up and followed me around the sales floor, demanding to know why I didn't take care of her. Quote, "precious boy," and protect him. From what? She never specified. And I later figured out that she was trying to get me to stop him from due substances in the parking lot, without saying with her out-loud voice that that was what he was doing. I tried explaining that I was neither a manager nor a babysitter, but she just kept repeating that he was precious and that I was supposed to protect him. Anyway, eventually the manager above my manager did fire him, only for him to come in the next day, and the next. Not to work, to skulk around my department with his hoodie up and his hands in his pockets in a very have-a-gun way, muttering about what a holes we all were. For hours, my manager wouldn't do anything, because she felt bad for him. Eventually, the manager above my manager had him escorted out and banned. He's probably in now, if I had to guess. Story 15. Guy who worked in my office for about 6 months. Older guy, nice but kind of weird, disappeared after taking a giant crap in the stairwell leading down to the cafe. I saw him suddenly get up and walk as fast as possible to the stairwell. There were bathrooms downstairs across from the cafe, but also one's a closer walk upstairs. Didn't think anything of it till I heard a scream about 10 minutes later. Giant pile at the top of the stairs and a trail leading down. Story 16. He was the life and soul of the office, a proper family man and a trusted department manager. His wife was sadly diagnosed with cancer, so for a couple of years he was on reduced hours to look after her and his young son. Sadly, he passed away. Never found out how. But the strange thing was the police had to reach out to the company as he had no next of kin. Turns out he didn't have a wife or son or any other close friends or family. Very sad. Story 17. I had an internship as an electrician in a hospital, and one of my colleagues, middle-aged fed up with life dude, was always stretching the barriers. The ducker, you'll see why I just called him that soon, had wife and kids to take care of, but he was showing up late, going shopping while still punched in, and just had a general lazy attitude towards work. The boss sent him over to another hospital nearby, where after a few months, the groundskeeper called us in to tell us someone had been sleeping in the vent room for a good while, weeks, and there was a mattress there and a reading lamp. We immediately figured it was our guy, but no proof. Anyway, the hospital where I worked had 8 floors, and the 4th floor was off limits as they had closed that specific department. Can't remember which specialists were in there, but some of us could access this floor to do maintenance work. So he gets transferred back, and a couple of months pass. Colleague starts noticing he's hanging around the orthodontic department a lot and is gone for weird periods of times. Till one day, one of the security guards does a round on 4th floor, all abandoned and dark, and hears moaning coming from one of the rooms. Start walking there when moaning stops abrupt, and a person bolts out of the room with a jacket onto of his head and trousers halfway pulled up. Strong pull-out game. Dashes to the doors like Casper, the horny ghost, and then this poor lady he was ducking was just left there. He'd even dragged a worn-out mattress for the occasion. And they say chivalry is dead. Anyway, so you have to access the floor by swiping your card and enter your personal code. So we had our Scooby-Doo meeting the next day where we reveled our horny ghost on floor 4, must have been our colleague, and he was fired. Oh, and he lost his family too. Story 18, he got fired for harassment, repeatedly saying dirty, suggestive stuff to 2 coworkers. One of the 2 coworkers told their husband and he broke the guy's nose. Story 19, she was legitimately damn nuts, like she seriously needed to be medicated. Her moods would shift right in front of you. It was unnerving. And for some reason, despite doing next to no work for probably the highest salary, she was a miserable hole. Took it upon herself to literally set people up for 3 strikes so she could fire them. She managed to get through 2 managers for bullcrap reasons because the regional manager didn't give a duck no matter how many times she was reported for harassment. He didn't have to work with her, so he went on about his business, also being paid to do nothing. She'd started to set up a 3rd manager for the chopping block when she finally went too far. She had just gotten through firing 2 when she made a fatal mistake. She put the company at risk. She told me she'd fired him for skimming money from the till, which was absolute bullcrap. She told another employee he was fired for telling a breastfeeding customer to cover up, which actually happened, in a completely different store hours away. It made no sense whatsoever. Never mind the fact that she wasn't supposed to tell anyone anything in the first place. Given the potential legal ramifications, they finally fired her. By then, 24 employees had quit or been fired in 3 months. They could barely open the store with the people who were left. They marched her ugly ass out the door, carrying a plant and her fish. Last I saw her, she was stuck standing at the front of Best Buy as a greeter. Story 20. Woman I worked with, both of us in our early 20s, came into my office, grabbed my hands, and started crying with joy that I was in heaven with her. She was relieved to see a familiar face. After a bit more of this conversation, I told her she should take the rest of the day off and get some rest. Then she left work and ended her life. Story 21. She was my partner in surveillance. She started leaving me for hours at a time, which got really frustrating. I would try to find her on camera so I knew where to call to get her to come back so I could have a bathroom or coffee break. I started to notice that every time I looked for her, she was chatting with this one new girl. This was happening every day. And then I noticed they started taking night shift breaks together. Then one night, I saw them head outside together. They both got in her car and were just chatting in the front seat. Suddenly, they start making out, and next thing I know, they're both getting out and getting into the back seat. This became a regular thing on night shift. Fast forward several months, she's now separated from her husband and living with this coworker. Story 22. Back when I worked at McDonald's, there was this one guy. He was very full of himself and told some really dumb lies. Like how he was in a band that frequently toured the country, but he worked 50 hours per week on minimum wage. Or how his parents bought him an entire room filled with vintage guitars. But in a separate conversation, he explained that they worked middle management jobs and were struggling for money. He sent what was at the time, new girl a picture of his junk. She went nuclear and rallied the rest of the female staff against him, but she went through the proper channels. She basically ran an FBI-style investigation on him and managed to find out that he has done this to nearly every single female employee, most of which were young. Not entirely sure why they never spoke up because it's not like this guy was intimidating. And he didn't have management in his pocket. He was just some random 19-year-old with a massive ego. He was fired almost immediately, and apparently has been shamed out of the town I live in. This was 4 years ago, and I haven't seen him since. Eventually, his texts were spread around a group chat the girls were in. I was very friendly with the new girl and some of the others, and myself and a few other guys saw the messages. Imagine every cliche message you've ever seen or heard about. There was begging, threats, backtracking on those threats, more junk pics when the first one didn't work, more begging. There was even that nuzzles you crap that the socially awkward neckbeards use. Thing is, the guy was good looking and he carried himself well. He could have actually gotten a girl or two if he wasn't such a frickin' creepy weirdo. I've got another one from the same place. A guy I got along with very well decided he needed to quit and move himself, his fiancée and his kids to Liverpool for better paying work. Roughly 1 year later, her show's back up and they hand him his job back. because I guess it was easier than hiring new staff to train up. He suspiciously and very quickly became a manager. And then shortly after that, he started dating another one of the managers. Turns out that while he was away, he was repeatedly cheating on his fiancée with anyone that would have him. So they moved back to my area and then officially broke up, leaving him effectively homeless. And his time with his kids was dramatically cut down. Not too long after becoming a manager, his ego started to flare up, something I had only seen glimpses of when he was a regular line worker. He became insufferable and hard to work with within a matter of weeks. A while later, his new manager girlfriend put in a sick note for some emotional leave. Turns out he was cheating on her with another manager from the same place. They all had to work together, and you could cut the tension with a knife. He was fired. Story 23. I taught new technicians on the machines we worked on. In our work area, all of us were required to wear work smocks. New hire, I noticed, kept eating out of his pocket with tweezers. Food in the work area is prohibited, so I told him he needed to stop. He didn't. I told him again to stop. He didn't. I told him to go to his locker and leave the food. Caught him later the same day eating something else out of his pocket, again with tweezers. He didn't make it past probation. Story 24. Oh, you're talking about Howie. They finally fired him, but it took way longer than it should have. I worked with Howie for only 2 months before moving to a different team, for other reasons. This was 10 years ago. But some Howie stories I still remember. I believe Howie was trying to get fired because he believed he wouldn't have to pay back his signing bonus. When I informed him that they could demand repayment, he screamed, "That damn idiot lied to me!" in the team room. Howie was from China. At one point, an older teammate was talking about growing up in Japan and that she had, "Bring your poop to school day." She explained that when she was a kid, they tested for parasites. I have no idea if this is true, but Howie said, "That's nothing compared to junk measuring day." I also have no idea if that's true, but I'm concerned for Howie. Howie never washed his hands. Our team room had 2 doors. Everyone knew one door was for Howie. The other door was for everyone else. Howie frequently worked from home, but never took his laptop home. Our work required a company laptop to access the network. Howie tended to show up at 10, leave at 2, took a 2-hour lunch and 2 15-minute breaks throughout the day. On the bright side, it bonded everyone else on the team. Even 10 years later, we'd still sometimes trade Howie stories. Story 25. Happy-go-lucky, once professional-level sports star from school, moved back to our hometown to care for his ailing parents and was looking for something to keep him occupied during the day. I hired him as a delivery driver. He was with us for just under a year. He knew his roots very well, picked up all job-related tasks fast, and was a great asset to the team. One morning, he did a run with 0 incidents. He came back at lunch to grab items for the afternoon deliveries, but uncharacteristically asked the supervisor to load his truck up, claiming the material was in a bad position, and he was nervous about hitting something with the pump truck while trying to move it out of the staging area. Late afternoon, the supervisor comes to me, saying the driver had sent a cryptic text showing a pic of a hit hand with caption that read something like, "Oops." The driver ceased replying after a couple back-and-forth messages where he downplayed the severity. We were in a cold spell and it was well below freezing. We have GPS tracking software on the truck, and I could see it was sitting in an industrial area and had not been running for over an hour. The driver claimed he ran to a pharmacy across the road to bandage up and was going to take a break to regroup, then head home. His story didn't track with what the software was showing me. After failed attempts to get a hold of him myself, I decided to call the non-emergency line. While talking to the operator, a few of his coworkers were in my office, and it came to light that he had mentioned a fight with the GF the night before, and that he seemed off that morning. I suggested he may be at risk for self-harm, so the operator dispatched someone to do a wellness check. I received a phone call back about half an hour later from a police officer who informed me that our driver was arrested for impaired. He had a bottle of vodka and can of Mountain Dew in the truck. He was double the legal limit. The truck was impounded with most of our undelivered product still inside. The Mountain Dew froze and exploded all over the cab, and the inside of the cargo area looked like the basement from Blair Witch. Afterward, and why I never checked this before, I'll never know. I looked at the GPS and could see that his driving was erratic the entire afternoon. He jumped on the wrong highway, had to exit and loop back. He failed to find the exit out of a client's parking lot, and instead drove over a curb that divided their lot from a neighbor's and exited from that parking lot instead and made quite a few U-turns on high-volume roads and didn't take the optimal route to this city, which would result in failure to complete his deliveries even if he wasn't under the influence. Turns out he moved home so that his parents could take care of him. On a good note, the GPS company was thankful to be given real-life data to use to better notify software users of suspected impaired driving. Story 26. I had this one coworker who was a couple days out of training and made some memes poking, lighthearted fun at our dumb-as-hell customer base in what was supposed to be a fun Slack channel. It was literally called Water Cooler. Come to find out, the CEO is actually in this supposed fun group and wasn't fond of us making fun of our customers. Kid immediately gets fired, and anyone who liked or replied to the post were reprimanded. And we all had to attend an all-hands meeting to basically get chewed out over what happened. This was at a time they made a lot of crafty changes. So needless to say, I updated my resume pretty soon after. Story 27. He was in his late 20s. He started a Twitch stream, got a lot of followers right off the bat, let the success go to his head. Met one of his female followers, IRL. She was 18, but still in high school. Sealed the deal, so to speak. In another state. Told his wife he was on a business trip. He phoned HR about possibly moving to that girl's state since his contract doesn't require client visits. Girl's parents found out. Since the girl was, accepting of the event, there was nothing the police could do. The parents then Googled his name and location. They found a phone number. Took a chance when they called. The girl's parents spoke to the coworker's wife and spilled all the tea. Dude went down a spiral for the next 3 months and got fired for poor performance. He landed on his feet, but his alimony and child support payments are crippling, as his wife hasn't worked in 2 years because daycare is prohibitively expensive where we live. She also got the house. This dude works a day job 5 days a week and reportedly drives Uber during all of his spare time. Some friends ended up getting him as their driver and had a convo about everything that happened. Story 28. Company put us all up in a hotel for one due to snow, closing the roads and public transportation down. One of my coworkers decided living in the hotel was way better than at home and extended his stay for a week. He got fired when the company got the bill for his hotel stay. No idea why he thought they would pay for it. Story 29. After he quit, special investigators showed up asking for him and wanted to know where he was. He had apparently been trying to hit his wife by putting poison in her coffee every morning. Story 30. They held someone at knife point robbing them. Ordered them to drive to the victim's house where he threatened to hit the victim and his mother. The victim was able to get a knife out of their center console and hit said coworker, paralyzing them. He was ultimately locked up 80 years, I believe. He is also suspected of a hit in a separate case. Wild crap. Story 31. He threatened to poison all the managers after coming into work completely wasted, got fired, got ran over by a boyfriend who attempted to hit him, and ended up getting ran over again and actually end when he moved out of state, and decided to bike down the middle of the highway at night. Story 32. He's a great guy. He's very excited to work, except that he's terrible at it. Nobody wants him, but nobody wants to fire him, so he keeps moving from one area to another. I like the guy. I really do, but this isn't a charity. He needs to be fired, and the longer management delays that, the harder it will be. Story 33. I got two. One, an awkward temp. Brought his lunch in a giant Ziploc bag that was all fried stuff. Anyway, first day, about midday, he waddles over to the bathroom, whose door is in full view of the office proper. We don't notice until someone asks a question to Wix. He knows the answer. He responds. We all turn and notice the bathroom door is completely open while he's on the pot talking to us. Yes, he was homeschooled. Why do you ask? Number two, the phantom pooper. Hired a temp at a biotech company. He was okay, whatever. Then for some reason, the main floor bathroom next to my lab always had a Titanic crap just floating in the bowl. Management noticed. Management put together a sting operation where a person would check the stalls after anyone went into the men's restroom. Hallway cams. This temp was ruled as likely, and despite being a lab tech, we jumped 2 levels and a senior director sat him down in meeting to tell this damn adult to flush the toilet after he blew it up. Okay, fine. Next week, he blows the toilet up 3 days in a row without flushing, and aforementioned senior director had to fire his non-flushing ass. Bonus. I worked for the government for a while, and a GS-14 told me, adding water doesn't affect pH when I asked her about how to analyze an oily food sample, on which pH probes don't work. Double nerd bonus. Aforementioned GS-14 told me a colleague's gel electrophoresis failed because they used the wrong comb size, despite the gel nearly solid and the latter moving like 5 centimeters over an hour. She makes Twix as much as most of us for half the work and a quarter of the IQ. Story 34. We got a new girl, not in my department, but in the department that shared our section of the office. She was damn wackadoo. She'd talk to herself in the mirror, mumble to herself while at her desk. She'd roll in 5 minutes before she had to be punched in and yell at her computer for starting up too slow. Every conversation would be completely derailed by her yelling and making everything about herself. We'd usually get lunch provided for us for fiscal year end. She walked behind me the whole way to the downstairs boardroom, where the food was set up, mumbling, "It better not be pizza? Better not be pizza." We walk into the room and she yells, "Oh, it's damn pizza!" Turns around and storms out. I heard from a coworker friend that she stomped up the steps muttering, "Damn pizza!" The only management in the room was my DEP's mom supervisor. Office mom, everyone loves her. I think it must have been reported and was a strike against her because only a week or so after that she was fired. I was out that day, but I was told by the previously mentioned friend that there was a lot of screaming and cursing when HR dropped off her box. Damn you, Elaine, and your vendetta against pizza. Free food is free food. Story 35. Kid-centric water park. He put broken glass in the pool because he didn't get one day of the 4-day span he requested off. We were taught in training that if broken glass was found in the pool, the park would have to be closed for about 3 days to complete a process to make sure it was fully removed. He figured he could use this to his advantage. He got his day off. Him and the rest of the morning shift were sent home while the glass was removed. The park ended up opening later that afternoon after the removal process was expedited. Luckily, no one was hurt because this all happened in the morning before we opened to the public. He bragged about it to some of our other coworkers who ended up reporting him. Story 36. He hit his landlord and he passed away. He wasn't a notable weirdo or outcast and was actually pretty good at his job. I don't work there anymore. I had another coworker who flew home to the USA for vacation, went to a shooting range, and end his life. He was a really nice guy. Then there was the crap bandit in another multinational I worked in. At least 3 times per month, this creep would enter one of the men's bathrooms, put the toilet seat lid down, and then crap on it and leave the turd just sitting there to be found. We never did catch him. Facilities tried removing the toilet seat lids, but he just left the turds on the toilet seats themselves after that. Funniest part? It was someone's job to photograph the scene every time it happened so they could build a case in the event of discovering who the culprit was. Poor git with a phone full of pictures of some other dude's turds. Story 37. Constantly told everyone, I'm insert religion here. That means I can't lie. You can bet your last dollar she was the biggest liar in the whole department. She was caught by multiple people on multiple occasions, pressing her ear up to the door of the manager's office. She would leave early because she wasn't feeling well, totally valid, but got mad at the team leader for notifying the manager because you didn't have to tell. She told higher-ups that she was the mother figure for a staff member who was removed from her own mother due to abuse. Higher-ups were so creeped out by this that they let the individual know this had been said. There were some vents and windows between our main workroom and a secondary workroom. If she was the only one in the main room and she could see people talking in the secondary room, she would turn off the radio and sit by the vents. We're pretty certain she was trying to listen in. One time when this happened, I was chatting with our cleaner and he said he was irritated by something this woman had said. She spent the next week being sickly sweet to him, on an extremely uncomfortable level. Complained when other colleagues would correct her when she did something incorrect. She then demanded that she only be trained by the team lead, but would then ask us how to do various things and didn't understand why would tell her to ask the team leader. Ended up in an argument with the team leader in the corridor, so everyone heard. It got pretty heated. That team leader didn't get reprimanded. Actually, multiple higher-ups asked if they were okay because they were pretty laid back. No one asked how that woman was because everyone knew she had a reputation for causing conflict. When I left, a colleague I was friends with told me that this woman was pissed off that I didn't tell her. I was supposed to have my last day on the Friday that week, but there was a mix-up, and my employer had my last day down as the Thursday. I only found out on that same Thursday. I was fine with that, because I didn't want to spend another day working with her. Story 38. Male employee took female employee's house keys out of her purse and had copies made on his lunch. When the female employee got home from work that day, he was waiting for her in her bedroom. Thankfully, she got out quickly and without harm and was able to call the police. Story 39. They went and visited an escort during an entire work trip and didn't attend any of the very important customer meetings. Submitted an expense report asking to be reimbursed for the entertainment. They were not reimbursed. Story 40. A few years ago, we had a new gal come in as a rookie employee who had been in another state as a sheriff's deputy for a short amount of time. Less than a year after she began her training, she was put on graveyard shift as part of the rotating schedule we have. She came in once or twice for that shift, then began to call in sick pretty much every night for what felt like 2 months. We were all pissed because someone has to cancel things, come in early, or stay over to cover her body, as we are manned 24 hours a day. One morning after those very few shifts she actually showed up for, we get a call from her ex-husband, husband one, explaining she'd come down to his house after work to confront him. It was a very Jerry Springer situation, per the rumor mill. She was angry and broke out his truck's window and possibly was drunk and wanted to leave with her kids. But he wouldn't let her. She had to blow and go. Her reasoning for not showing up to work stemmed from this incident and she was embarrassed. Understandable, I guess. Union and HR were willing to work with her, but I guess her situation didn't improve because she continued to be a no-show, so she eventually resigned. Fast forward a few months, her second marriage dissolves, but she soon gets a new boyfriend. She gets arrested for assaulting him, but it's a toxic relationship and they stay together. Then a few months after that, she's in the local news. She'd been having an argument out on the street with her boyfriend who was walking on the side of the road while she slowly followed along in her truck. The boyfriend allegedly tells her mid-argument, "Why don't you just end with yourself?" And I guess she took it to heart and intentionally accelerates and rams her truck into a random vehicle on the road from the incoming lane. The driver of the car was an 88-year-old woman who passed a month or so later. Charges get brought up to vehicular homicide. So that's that. Story 41. Her husband was the head of a department in another area of the company, banging his secretary. She'd, I guess, had enough of his BIs and unfortunately decided to confront him at work by bursting into his office and stripping off her clothes in front of his whole department, screaming, "Am I not woman enough for you?" Husband and wife were both in their mid-60. Both got fired, forced retirement. Not sure about the secretary. I think she just never came back to work. I felt sorry for her. He was a known, and she must have gone through a lot to get to that point and snap. Story 42. Called in sick the first day on the job. Later that day, his wife called, asking to speak with him. We told her he was homesick. She told us he was definitively not. He never came back in. Maybe coworker isn't really the right word. Story 43. His wife was secretly exchanging letters and FaceTiming his best friend, whom happened to be a woman, but they were like brother and sister, true friends. Went everywhere together. If I remember right, her name was, well, let's all call her Pam. Anywho, Pam, and let's call him Costner, because who doesn't like Kevin Costner? Deployed together out to Kandahar, Afghanistan. From what I heard, whenever Costner's wife couldn't get a hold of him, she ended up talking to Pam. Over the course of the deployment, Pam and his wife became really close as she confided a lot in Pam. Naturally, Pam was there to comfort her and keep her calm, as Costner was a squad leader and assisted the watch commander while on duty, running escorts a lot. Fast forward to when everyone comes home, Costner returns home to Pam and kids, but not all was well. We all started noticing he grew more reclusive, started drinking a lot more, but the biggest shocker was he flat out cut off friendship with Pam. Those guys were super close. And Pam just flipped a switch, man. She started attacking Costner for everything under the sun, criticized him all the time in front of the rest of the crew, and just straight up treated him like garbage. Turns out Pam had developed a romantic relationship with Costner's wife, and Costner's wife filed for divorce and full custody of his kids within a month of Costner returning home. 6 months later, Pam is a newly married woman to Costner's ex-wife. He lost his wife and his kids of 10 years to his female co-worker ex-best friend. I have never seen a man more broken in my life. I have no idea where he is now and haven't seen or spoken to him in 0.9 years. Hope he's okay, though. Story 44. Crap his pants intentionally 40 times over the year to be able to go home early to play video games before his wife and kid got home. Age, incident 37. Story 45. Guy got through the interview process, I don't know how. Offset lithography, web-fed, as opposed to sheet-fed, so big rolls of paper, gave himself a paper cut on the first day, and that became his nickname. I don't remember his actual name anymore. He is just paper cut. He started wearing those canvas and leather work gloves after that, which is problematic in an environment that require fast-paced, fine motor skills, but he persevered. The sandwich vending machine at work. The little doors would open once the item in it was sold. And we watched him go through the carousel on the third day and take every leftover ketchup and mustard packet that anyone had left behind. Then sit down at the cafeteria table and eat each single serve condiment packet, one by one. He lasted the whole week, but didn't show up for the start of the next shift. Disappeared with only some empty ketchup and mustard packets to show that he'd ever been. Story 46. I received an invitation to a free catered lunch on company property from a coworker. My suspicions weren't raised because members of HR, accounting, etc., were all on the invitation list. I figured it was extremely generous of my coworker, and perhaps she would be announcing her departure and future plans with lunch served as a celebration. Instead, we all walked into a pyramid scheme presentation. Story 47. What didn't happen with this guy? He cheated on his professional licensure exam and bragged about it. He had someone else take the test for him. He'd go home and nap on the clock. He threatened other employees. He'd make inappropriate comments about clients, not just at the office, but at their homes, sometimes when he was alone with them. And he stole thousands of dollars from the company. And that's just the amount I could prove beyond a shadow of a doubt. But the actual total was much higher. Like, he stopped paying for his phone and racked up a $5,000 bill on the work phone, kind of thing. He was undependable to start with, and that got worse and worse as time went by. He started a fire being careless with a blazing torch in a client's house, and that caused us no end of expense and grief to fix. He screwed up jobs a lot, and one he screwed up so bad it took more than 2 days to do. And the dude did not leave the client's house, stayed there all through dinner, wouldn't leave, and it was past midnight by the time they got him out. I did my level best to get him canned because he was a nightmare and we weren't safe with him, but the boss was a spineless ass and refused. It took the guy not showing up to work, in possession of one of our vans, for 2 weeks to finally be rid of him. That was the midpoint of a pretty serious decline for him. He'd never been a good guy. I was friends with his brother, who had some absolutely hair-raising stories about the kind of kid he'd been, but he went full tilt menacing toward the end. Last I heard, he was living on the streets, not getting help for severe mental illness. I feel bad about it conceptually, but the guy was a terrible human being, and I'm frankly glad he's not at home terrorizing his family anymore. Story 48. I'm working in Antarctica. There's a lot of rules here to keep people alive. If you go hiking or anywhere out of town, you need a radio to give dispatch an ETA for when you're back, and to inform dispatch you're back. We get severe weather here, as you can imagine. We have different weather conditions and rules around what we can do in each weather condition. Condition 3 and all is goose. There are no restrictions. Condition 2 is no extended outings, but travel between buildings is still allowed. Condition 1, and you're not allowed to even travel between buildings. Just hunker down until the storm passes. Some woman just got here and decided that she was going to go camping out on the sea ice during Condition 1. This was also when winter just started, so the sea ice is questionable in a lot of places. She stole, borrowed a tent, and then went out on the ice super far from town to spend the night. Surprisingly, she made it through the night and didn't pass. But she did post pictures of it all on her social media, so she get fired. Really don't understand how someone can be so stupid on so many levels. Story 49. I worked in a hotline call center many years ago. This is one of those places tied to a governmental agency, so the calls we took could end up triggering investigations, police activity, and/or hospitalizations. This woman joined the team I was on, and her desk was right next to mine. There were times where there were lulls in the calls, and we had some time to chat, and I would do just that. Now, it's hard to explain, but every time we would chat, it was almost like we were having two different conversations. Sometimes, her responses would not match what we were talking about. Other times, she would smile and turn away without responding. It was beyond odd. Maybe a month into her employment there, she took a day off to go see her fiancé out of state so they could finish planning their wedding. But when she was scheduled to return, she was a no-show, no call. A few days go by, still no word. Finally, I want to say about 10 days after she left, we get a fax into the hotline. Written in crayon, it's from this woman alleging she has been kidnapped by the police, was locked in a room, and needed our help because this place had resources. They sent investigators out to see what was going on. Turns out she'd gone home, without telling her family, for the sole purpose of stalking this guy who was definitely not her fiancé, much less boyfriend or even friend. It was an acquaintance from her hometown whom she was apparently obsessed with. When her family found out she was in town, they went to meet her, and she flipped out, grabbed a bottle, smashed it, and tried to hit her. The fax she wrote came from the hospital she was involuntarily committed to. She literally ended up being a patron of her own hotline. Story 50. He was friends with the GM, so any complaints about him weren't taken seriously. Complaints like not letting a maintenance worker leave an area until they cussed at them to get out of the way, and putting a padlock on the gate for the dumpsters, blocking a way out even after telling me that a wash rag caught fire recently in the same area. How would housekeeping staff get out of the only exit was padlocked? He would talk down to and about everyone. Well, he messed up really bad. He brought a handgun to work carrying 50 rounds and showed it off. Why on earth would he need 50 rounds? He had it unsecured in the back of his pants when leaving, etc. Fast forward to the hotel having two groups in that were black. One had a teen youth camp included. They were loud one night, and an argument broke out between them and another guest. The teens jiggled the door handle, and the guest felt threatened. They did the more appropriate thing and called the police. What did the tall, old, white conservative manager in question say when telling this story? They're lucky it wasn't me. I would have hit first. No, that's not what your first option should be. He got fired. But the enabling GM is still there, continuing to cause issue, including lying on the one who reported it to HR, accusing them of yelling at them during a dispute. No one heard that employee yelling, but HR didn't do anything about the write-up. Story 51. Was a trainer at my first job in fast food, and I ended up training a girl who turned out to be a pathological liar. She started with the pretty atypical teen girl lies to talk oneself up. Older brother is a celebrity, dating a musician that is famous, but she couldn't tell us who for his safety, etc. Personally, I found it annoying but harmless, and mostly just told her to focus on her job. She did get called out on one major lie. She said she grew up in Russia and had been infected with TB, but when the manager found out and told her she couldn't work until her doctor cleared her, she came clean about the lie. Then she tried to ruin the life of a disabled coworker, and that's when crap hit the fan. The coworker was an older guy with autism. Whilst his social abilities left a bit to be desired, he was an awesome worker, and I personally loved chatting with him. He also worked for his mother's daycare and was just an all-around lovely man. And that git tried to say he cornered her in the back stockroom and assaulted her one day. I'd never seen the man cry until that day. He thought he was going to be arrested and he was going to have his mother's daycare shut down. It was awful, but thankfully the dumb idiot forgot there were cameras in the stockroom. Not only did he not touch her, the only time they were in the stockroom together was when she asked him to come back and pull the cap off of something she couldn't get. Needless to say, she was fired, and because she was only 18, her parents were called and they were livid with her. Story 52. Oh, which one? Take your pick. 1. went mentally insane, hit his roommate and he pass, also a coworker, lit the apartment building on fire and end his life. That was a long time ago and none of us know what the motive was. Guy was one of the nicest people you could ever meet. 2, stole over $700,000 worth of product over the course of 5 years. Got nailed by law enforcement when he started trying to sell it. 3, got into a verbal altercation with a coworker after said coworker did a stupid move and injured him. He quit on the spot. Came back 3 hours later with a rifle and threatened people exiting the building. Place got put on lockdown. SWAT showed up. He surrendered peacefully and nobody was injured. 4, after 3 years of never doing any work and sleeping most of the time, he got fired, then sued the company for wrongful termination and somehow won. He then passed 2 years later. 5, after getting fired, he sabotaged most machines running in a matter of 5 minutes. 6, she poured a bunch of hazardous chemicals together in a 5-gallon bucket and poured it down a ventilation duct because she was a lazy idiot. This caused nasty fumes to build up and sent 5 people to the ER. She got fired. 7, it turns out he was a plant from a competitor. Not only did he steal IP, he also sabotaged many projects and ruined long-term business relationships with several key clients. He spent over $170,000 on the company card for personal expenses. All bogus. He got fired, the company went after him legally, but he was a slimy worm and got away free. I could keep going. A lot has happened during my career.